Welcome to the RTC Fitness YouTube channel. This is video number 1 in a brand new series that we're putting together, The Road to Blue Belt. So recently, I just started doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for the very first time. I'm about 2 weeks in, so I'm the whitest white belt going around, but I wanted to put together a video series of my road to blue belt. So to kick us off on this video series, I'm going to be taking you through the 5 things that I wish that I knew before stepping into my first class. Stick around to the end of the video because I have a bonus tip that doesn't come from me, that comes from a good friend of mine who's actually a professional BJJ competitor. He competes at a pretty high level in jiu-jitsu. So he shared a tip with me. Stick around to the end, I'm going to share it with you as well. Okay, so caveat before we start, I am not a black belt, I'm a white belt. I'm a white belt, no stripe. So I am 2 weeks into this journey, so take everything that I say with a grain of salt. If you want an expert advice on what you should know, this is not the video for you. But I have done my first couple of lessons, so I'm just going to share with you what I wish that I knew day one. Number 1, do your research. Do your research in the basic terminology, the basic positions in jiu-jitsu. You don't need to go out and watch a montage of the top 5 submission finishes in MMA or UFC or whatever. That's probably not going to help you. But what you should do is just learn the basic terminology so that when your instructor, when your coach, when your teacher is demonstrating the first technique, you'll know what he's talking about, or you'll have a better idea. There's nothing worse than being completely lost and not know anything, because then you're probably unlikely to continue because you just feel way out of your depth. Now, your research doesn't need to be extensive. I put a link in the description below on a really good article that takes you through the basic terminology, the basic positions, the basic submissions, and phrases and terms that are used, so you know what you're getting into and you'll know it when you hear it. Tip number 2 is don't be the stinky new guy. Don't stink. So this comes into a bit of personal hygiene. Now, if you watch any video on what should I know before my first BJJ lesson, this comes up a lot, is personal hygiene. So take a shower, put deodorant on and brush your teeth, use some mouthwash. You get pretty intimate when you're sparring with your training partners. This is called rolling. Now, when you're rolling with your training partners, you're very close to them. So if you smell or you haven't, done what you need to do before class, it's gonna be pretty obvious. Tip number 3. Now this one is more of a personal one. What I wish I knew day 1 is don't go batshit balls to the wall every single time. Calm down and relax. Now, when you're sparring with your training partners, particularly when you're sparring with someone with a lot more experience than you, and as a white belt, that's everyone, you have a tendency, or I have a tendency, to try and muscle my way in and out of bad positions, muscle my way out of a submission, and I just burn out in the first 2 minutes and then get submitted very easily. This is pretty instinctive though, because when you don't know any technique, you try to default to what you do know, brute force and strength. So if you go in with that frame of mind that you're not there to try and muscle your way in and out of everything and just relax, breathe through your nose and calm down, then you'll be a lot better in the long term. It will be easier to adapt. Don't get me wrong, you can use your strength, but when you use it, be explosive. Focus on your timing. If your training partner's not moving and they're not doing anything, then you don't need to either, unless you want to apply explosive force to get out of a position. Tip number 4 is all about etiquette. Now, this is something that I was personally concerned about moving in, or apprehensive about is probably a better way of putting it, moving into my first lesson, because I understood that there was certain things that you need to do, like traditions and bowing and things like that, but I'm here to say that it won't really matter moving into your first lesson. Every single jiu-jitsu academy has a different way of doing things. They have different traditions, different etiquette, and different expectations and guidelines, if you will. you will learn them on day one. People will tell you if you breach a certain guideline or you don't bow correctly or whatever, someone is going to tell you. They're going to be polite about it. No one's a dick. Well, if they are, you're at the wrong academy. So don't stress about it. With etiquette, don't worry about it. Don't try and research all you can about it, because it's going to be dependent on what academy you're in, and it's not going to matter in the long run because you will learn it day one, and it's quite simple. But there are some universal things like, again, hygiene, don't be a bug, cut your nails, that sort of stuff. Don't wear your shoes on the mats. That's pretty much universal throughout and just basic good bloke behavior. But in terms of your nuances and specifics for your academy, you'll learn as you go. And tip number 5, this is something that I really wish that someone told me day one. Again, I'm only 2 weeks in, but it's in that 2 weeks, it's been a trial, is tap early and tap often. So when a higher belt or anyone really has you in a very tight, very deep submission, and you know that you've been got, if you will, just tap early and tap often. So you're not in it for an ego game. It's not about trying to win. It's not about trying to beat your training partner. It's about trying to learn and develop your jiu-jitsu game. Jocko Willink and even Joe Rogan talk about this a lot, is leave your ego at the door. Particularly when you're rolling with someone that may be younger than you, maybe you're rolling with a 16-year-old kid or something like that, and they get you into a very good submission. Just tap. Don't try and muscle your way out of it, because you might end up hurting yourself. I tried to do this a lot in my first few sessions until I realized that it's okay to be submitted. It's okay to tap. And I took it one step further. After the roll, I would say, hey man, that was a really good submission. Can you tell me, what the name of it is, what it's called, and maybe even how to do it? And most of the time, the higher belts will be more than happy to demonstrate and to help you out in how to do that submission, and you learn from it. And lastly, the bonus tip. Again, this is not mine. I did not come up with this. I'm not smart enough to think of this. But this comes from Jeremy Skinner. He is a pro-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor, and he told me to write everything down after the lesson. So when I come home after a Jiu-Jitsu lesson, I write down whatever was taught, whatever drill we went through, or whatever skill was taught in that lesson. I write it down. Not only do I write it down, I write down the emphasis points that the instructor really drilled in on. I write down any sticking points that I had trouble with, and of course the name of whatever submission or escape or whatever it may be. I write down the sequence of movements and as much as I can remember about them. And then what I do is I write down any submissions or any difficulties I had in the rolling or the sparring section of the lesson. For an example, one day I got submitted by a triangle 4 times in a row by 4 different people. So I wrote down triangle choke, and then I pursued how to escape a triangle, and I tried to learn, and I'm still trying to learn how to do a triangle choke. So if you write down any issues you have with the rolls, then you can see or track reoccurring themes over the long run, and it will help you to improve your game. Now, you don't even need to consistently read your notes. You don't even need to read them at all. It's simply the art or the practice of writing them down, which will help with solidifying them in your mind and help you to get them out of your mind onto paper and remember them hopefully for longer and solidify them in your long-term memory. So there you have it, guys. Those are my top 5 tips that I wish that I knew 2 weeks ago before I started my very first jiu-jitsu lesson. And the bonus tip, of course, with Jeremy Skinner, I'm going to put a link to Jeremy's social media in the description if you want to check it out. He releases some really awesome content on jiu-jitsu, and again, he knows what he's talking about, so go check him out if you're interested. But if you're thinking about starting jiu-jitsu, but you're a bit apprehensive, don't be. It's going to be all right. Just go for it. And if you like this series idea, or you have any questions or anything like that, I might not be able to answer them if they're pretty nuanced about jiu-jitsu, but I can find someone that can. I'll even reach out to Jeremy. Leave them in the comment section below, and feel free to subscribe to the channel, give a thumbs up, and leave any comments that you have. Thanks for watching, and till next time, get after it.